Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Robin Hood, 1991. It's time to talk.
Once upon a time, there was a good-for-nothing ne'er-do-well. He saw the most beautiful woman in the whole of England.
Who's winning, Uncle?
Robert, of course.
I believe Sir Robert never loses.
And he fell in love with her. Well, the tragedy was she was promised to another mighty lord. She will marry him.
I challenge Sir Miles Falconay.
Robert Hood, as of this day, you are cast outside the law. A noble renegade.
The girl has made me an outlaw. Good. I'm going to show him what an outlaw is and what an outlaw does.
Andy, what happened with this movie? I thought I knew where the bar was set. Let's say, with all of the Robin Hood movies that we watched, I thought I knew where the bar was set. And then milquetoast happened in the form of John Irvin's 1991 Robin Hood.
Before we begin talking about our opinions about this film, I do just want to say I'm looking at a book called Robin Hood: Development of a Popular Hero. It prepared by John Chandler, and I don't know who actually wrote it. I think it's just a collection or something. But anyway, they reference Robin Hood in the Media, talking about several films. And this film actually is one of the ones that they reference. Let me just read this to you, okay?
Please. Yes.
This film was originally slated for release at the same time as Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but Fox recognized the power of its competition and decided to release this film directly to television and video. Most Robin Hood scholars and fans feel this is the better film. The story is much better and more in keeping with the traditional legend. John Irvin's direction is stronger, and Patrick Bergen's Robin recalls the capricious and dangerous figure of the early ballads. The medieval character of the film is more historically accurate because J.C. Holt, a noted Robin Hood scholar, served as a consultant.
I believe that there are viewers of this film who will absolutely agree with that. And I think on many points, it looks certainly looks more accurate. I had many fewer problems with the setting and with certainly the costumes. There were no weird scarves. But, and we'll talk about this later, there was that jester. So there are a lot of things going for this movie. I found this is the Robin Hood story if you extract from it any and all sense of style and personality and energy. It's just there. It is an amorphous it's the amorphous blob of Robin Hood stories. I found it might as well. I just was like sucking color out of the real world around me as I was watching it. My world became beige during this movie.
I mean, yes, I would agree. There are some aspects to the story that I actually found kind of interesting. I'm like, okay, this is an interesting way to play this particular antagonist, and who isn't somebody who we've ever seen, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that, that these antagonists we've never seen in Robin Hood stories before. There are landscapes that I really enjoyed. The way that they kind of treated life as they were living. I thought there were some interesting aspects to that. And the way that just some of the relation of the Normans and Saxons, that I believe the 1938 version had some of that talk. And I don't think any of the other ones have really brought that up since then. So it's nice to kind of see that coming back into the fold here. But on the whole, like, the story, just the way that the story is constructed, the way that the comedy hits, it just never worked for me. And I would argue that I don't think John Irvin's direction is all that strong in this particular film. I found it to be kind of a struggling film. I found some of the action sequences to be shot fairly poorly and staged oddly, where you know the action is kind of weird to tell, like, where are these people in relation to each other and why can't they see each other? It seems like they should be able to. And then the performances, like, I feel like looking at our lead actor of Patrick Bergen as Robin Hood, like, he's got a look that I really find striking as the character. Like, I just like him in the role. And then he starts kind of acting, and it's just kind of like this odd, and maybe it is like more appropriate to the capricious character in the myths or whatever, but I just didn't like it. Like, he just never felt like he was a character I should be taking seriously. It was a really frustrating film to watch. I never got a sense that the storytellers really kind of put things into a place where they could make an actual good film out of this, regardless of how close it is to the original Robin Hood myths.
You know what? We need to talk about a lot more of this because I think you bring up many, many very important points. But first, we need to tell you about something else. The next reel is brought to you by Audible.com. It is a fantastic home of incredibly well-produced audio books and dramas. And because I think it's fair to say that Andy and I had a middling experience with this week's movie, we thought, hell with it, we're just going to tell you about something really great. Andy,
Here.
what's really great?
There is an adaptation of a film coming out next year that I think we're both pretty excited for, and it is the adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune. And because of that, I've been re-listening to my Audible copy of that, which is, I just think, a really stellar version of the telling of that book. And it's great, and I'm getting prepped for it. And we said, you know what? So should everybody else who's listening. Check this book out. It is such a great read. It's got one narrator, but then there are certain chapters where they actually have a variety of voiceover actors playing different characters, and so it actually makes for a really fun listen.
Well, it's a really fun listen. We gotta mention some of those names because as a longtime fan of Audible productions, Dune has some of the real high point narrators. If you go for audiobooks because of the narrator and you don't even care so much about the books like I do, you're going to go for these. Scott Brick, he is an alpha narrator. That guy does the best stuff. But that you have Orlock Cassidy and Ewan Morton and Simon Vance. Simon Vance? Are you kidding? He's immediately behind Scott Brick, and they hang out together, and I'm sure that they dine together and coffee and probably some cards. And Ilyana Kadushin, they're all, it's an incredible cast. I'm serious. I have no motive to lie to you about this. It's that good. So, it's deceiving, though. 21 hours and 2 minutes. It feels too short for Dune. Maybe that's just because the movie felt that long the first time around. Anyhow.
Yeah, it's a long one, but it's, I'm sure, I don't know, in context of long, like big stories like this, like where does that fit as far as like a Game of Thrones? I don't know. I'm sure.
Well, Game of Thrones is about twice that long, right?
Just for one of the books. Okay.
Yeah, for one of the books, like the first. So they're all in the 40, 50 hour range. So this is practically a snack. You know what? If you're gearing up for Game of Thrones, this is a great appetizer.
There you go. Good for it.
Anyway, this is how you do it. You visit audibletrial.com/thenextreel. audibletrial.com/thenextreel. All you have to do is sign up for a new account there. You get 30 days to browse the service on us, and you get one book also on us. So what you do is you search for Dune by Frank Herbert. You look for the one with all the fantastic narrators, and you get it. And you'll get it for free, and you get to keep it forever. Even if you decide, you know what, Audible's not for me, you get to keep the book. How can you lose? You can't. That's the truth. audibletrial.com/thenextreel. You'll support great audio productions. Most importantly, you will support us. Thank you very much. audibletrial.com/thenextreel. Thanks to Audible for supporting the show. Patrick Bergen, Andy, he is a fine actor, but I realized why I never saw him in this movie when it came out. It's because I was seeing the other movie that was out this year with him in it. That is the fine Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts, which turns out, I would say, is a bigger draw than Robin Hood. And he was great in Sleeping with the Enemy. If you're a fan of Sleeping with the Enemy, this is the version of Sleeping with the Enemy that you want to see. I think there's only one.
Yeah, I liked him playing a creepy guy better.
And a contemporary guy. And that is actually why I wanted to bring this up. Like when you look at his performances in these movies, same year, I find him much more appealing playing both creepy, not heroic, but contemporary, not historic. Discuss.
I would agree with that. I think, well, and see, that's something, and I didn't know if that was something that John Irvin was intentionally kind of putting into the script, trying to kind of create his own updated version of it, or what he was specifically doing. But like there was some dialogue in this, notably between Robin and Marion, when they're there's some flirty conversations that feels like very modern conversations that they would be having. Like, I can't imagine them having trading the flirty barbs back and forth like they were here. It certainly would have happened in earlier Robin Hood films. And so to that end, it's like, okay, Patrick Bergen still doesn't fit, oddly. He's being kind of a more modern Robin Hood with some of that, even if he is a more contemporary to the time, specific of what Robin Hood would have been like. So it was kind of like, who are you trying to please here? I really struggled with that. And yeah, Patrick Bergin, because of that feel that he doesn't fit quite in that, that period piece for me, just it really didn't work.
Well, I find that disappointing too, because the more I see him in other things, the more I like him. He's a very charismatic Irishman. I think he is like, as watching clips of him preparing for the show, I really like his performance. I like his style. I like his charisma. He's a magnetic guy. And I didn't find that magnetism in Robin Hood. And I feel like Robin Hood as a character, by now we know, needs to be a charismatic guy. And there's something about the portrayal, of this Robin Hood that is less charismatic. It may be the characters that are in orbit around him, and I'll talk specifically about the antagonists here, our original antagonists, right? We've, in terms of making changes to Robin Hood lore, they've done it here, and I don't think it's for the better.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I struggled to find reason as to why they changed the antagonists for this story. Why did we end up? Is it just, were they trying to very specifically kind of create this real dramatic conflict between the Normans and the Saxons? Because that seems like the only reason, if Robin's going to be a Saxon and then he's got these Norman overlords. Because I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the sheriff would have been, honestly, I don't know. I don't know where the sheriff would have landed. But instead of the sheriff, no, we get Jerwin Crabbe, who's playing the Baron, and he's like the Baron of the land. And
Baron Roger de Guerre.
De Guerre, right, Baron de Guerre. And then his buddy is visiting, a Frenchman, Sir Miles Fulconet, played by Jürgen Prochnow, who we've talked about before and we've really loved in stuff like Das Boot. Here, he is playing a Frenchman, and his accent was just so hard for me to listen to.
Yeah.
A German speaking a French accent just never worked for me.
Yeah, in a movie that is just sort of an energetic valley, he is enough to get to spike my blood pressure. I mean, I felt like this is the comedy in the movie that I'm missing. It's just not a sense of humor I share. I was very frustrated watching this, and that's what I mean by Patrick Bergin not having enough to work against, like you need a good villain to work against. And I felt like the conflict that we have, the face-to-face conflict between Robin Hood and Fulconet and de Guerre, as the de Guerre Hood relationship changes, I felt like there was nothing energetic and cataclysmic and emotional about it. It was just there.
Yeah, and that's a frustrating aspect for this film, because you end up kind of creating this. The whole reason that Sir Robert Hood becomes Robin Hood is because of he helps a guy out in the forest, Much the Miller.
Much the Miller.
Yeah, and who had poached a deer. Fulconet wants to punish him along with de Guerre's men, and Robin saves them, and he goes to his friend the Baron, but it just kind of creates this weird conflict, and the whole you're going to get lashed anyway, and then he's like, well, I'm going to reveal your big secret, and it just was like, this is the whole reason he goes off into the forest. It just was like such a strange, the sense of logic as to the way that element of the story unfolded. I'm like, this is kind of odd for all of this to be the reason that he goes off.
And I think the frustrating part that I had with it is just its structure in the film. It was really made up of two scenes, right? We already had the inciting incident, which was the his rudeness in the forest to Fulconet. But the two scenes that are most important to the change in Robin's status is that first we had their conversation together. This is, I'm speaking of de Guerre and Robin the night before. And they're kind of saying, oh, he's going to expect you to be flogged tomorrow. And then we have that bit of narrative where he shares that there is a secret between them that Robin knows about de Guerre, but he can't ever talk about. That's one scene. And then we have the next morning scene where everything unravels, and everything unravels in a way that is so disjointed. Nothing feels like it fits. And I don't care if you're a fan of the historical elements of this Robin Hood, of the portrayal of the Normans and the Saxons, of the portrayal of the fiefdoms here that are at work across England, but the narrative structure of the film hinges on a scene that is not believable. It's chaotic and confusing, and I don't understand what drove Robin to blow up quite so much and incite this response from Daguerre. And once you lose that, you're right. The rest of the movie is just hanging by a thread.
Yeah, that's good. It's frustrating. I will say an element that came of that I ended up finding pretty interesting was that Robin isn't giving anything back to the poor. He's just robbing to basically get back at Daguerre and his men.
Right.
And because he knows that Daguerre has to pay this big tax to the prince, and so he's taking it so that Daguerre is basically left in the dirt and has to use his own money to pay. Mm-hmm. And through that leads Daguerre to actually start burning villages and all of that sort of stuff, which Robin slowly realizes, kind of like, this is for me. And that actually is kind of the turning point for him to go, oh, I need to help these people. And I thought that was actually... But
we should say, it still wasn't his idea, right? It was Will Scarlet.
It wasn't his idea. No, right. Which, and at first I was like, is Robin really like arguing against this? I was like,
yes.
What are they doing with this story? But he went
what's
along
weird
with it.
though, Andy? That might have been the most believable angle in all of this Robin Hood nonsense, right? The fact that this was actually originally a vengeance story and he's not a good guy and needed to be convinced that giving back to the poor. And that's a thing I liked about this, that once he made that turn, we actually got the mechanics behind what we get out of some of the other Robin Hood movies, which is he's buying the praise of the people, right? And he's buying the support of the people out from under, Daguerre in this case, but out from under the lords that are that run the communities. That's the believable part.
If they had found the way to write that into the script where I enjoyed these characters and everything that was unfolding, it would have been a really interesting take on the Robin Hood myth, and I really would have enjoyed it. But they just kept doing things like over and over that made it a struggle to watch this thing.
So we're missing the sheriff and Guy of Gisborne. Yeah. We have these other two. We don't have the king anymore.
We don't have King Richard. We do have Prince John. Edward Fox plays him and pops up only for a brief moment in the middle of the movie. And
what'd you think of him when he shows up? He's a character.
Well, at first I'm like, who is this drunkard that they brought in to play the prince? He's just like slurring his words and just like, this is just awful. And then I was like, oh, that's Edward Fox. Wow. What is he doing with his performance? Because I like Edward Fox. He's done some great performances through his career. And then I saw this and I'm like, I don't even get what's going on with this version of the prince. So that was kind of I don't know, a little disappointing that they did that with the prince. I mean, he's not in a lot of scenes though, so it's not a huge problem.
I think we have to talk about Maid Marian and how she fits into all of these mechanics.
So Maid Marian is the what was she? The niece, right? Of Daguerre.
Of Daguerre.
And she was there because he was giving her to Falconet as a bride, so that Falconet would give him a huge sum of money that would, I guess, help him pay off, the king or whatever.
Right.
And so she's there and she's riding. We first meet her. She's riding with Falconet when they're chasing this man in this fox hunt. And that's how she meets Robin, which is a very odd meeting because I didn't even realize she was in the group. And then all of a sudden he's just like looking at something and then it cuts to her and she's just on a horse. I'm like, where the hell did Marian just come from? It was really poor staging because you could barely register that she was there. And then all of a sudden he's just staring at her. And it's like, where did she come from? just not
that
well
happened
crafted.
multiple times, right?
Yeah,
multiple scenes that she's in, she's sneaking up.
No, not just her. It's the way that Irvin just constructed the film. It's just you don't realize he doesn't create a good sense of space as far as where people are, and all of a sudden you're cutting and you have like people like bad guys coming through these trees, but like the good guys can't see them, and it's just like, but they're like in seeing distance of each other, and just the way that he would stage things was very frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a real point of frustration. In terms of Marion, the character, we do have some things that she does a little bit differently in this movie, and I think there are things about the way Uma Thurman plays Marion that I like a lot better than what we've seen in some earlier Marions, certainly in Marion from Prince of Thieves. She has a turn in the middle. I mean, she's being married off. She's the bribe. You already set that up well enough. But right in the middle of the film, she sees Robin belittle Fulconet and decides, you know what, I'm going to go hang with them. Cuts all her hair off, dyes it with, I don't know, something. Shoe polish,
what you use.
mud.
Cow poop?
What do you use in what is period hair dye?
What does a 12th century person
12th
use
century hair dye use? It's not clean. I don't know. I don't know how you don't see it as hair dye. Like there were some real close-ups between Robin and Uma in this. How did he not notice? Like before he actually touched it, and it's coming off, and it was gross. Anyway, she's got some real agency in this movie, and I think I really liked that. I felt like that's something that it was agency that was consistent throughout the thread of the film, and in terms of the role of her character, I quite liked it.
But again, like so many Marions, even when they give her agency, by the time we get to the end, she's the damsel in distress.
Yeah. But maybe later at the end. I mean, I don't know.
She still has to get saved at the wedding. It's, that's just one of those elements that unfortunately falls into it. But speaking of Marion, though, I enjoyed their romance. I thought it was interesting, especially because she was disguising herself amongst his merry men as a page, basically. I thought that was actually kind of interesting. But what the hell? Where did this like random love story letter out of nowhere all of a sudden, like he's sneaking off by himself to go have a rendezvous with Marion, or who he thinks is Marion, but is actually Daguerre's lover, who's setting a trap for him. Meanwhile, he doesn't realize that Marion is actually disguised as a page in his group. And he goes off to meet up with this woman, doesn't tell anybody where he's going. Luckily, he brings the page along with him so that he can tell this love story to Marion, which is about him and Marion, of course, and how he met this woman and blah, blah, blah. It was so corny the way that whole thing played out. And meanwhile, she's like, no, it's a trap. You can't buy into this whole thing. And I'm like, this is how all of this is going to unfold. It actually could have worked if it was just written better and performed better and directed better.
Certainly staged better, blocked better. I didn't buy it. I was very confused. I think that's a real high point in terms of just confusion of the story. Where did it come from? Because it felt like I just couldn't connect how Daguerre and Fulconet would know exactly where they were. I didn't understand the mechanics of who was following whom. So he got like a message from the woman, Daguerre's lover, but how is he getting messages? Yeah. Like nobody knows. Yeah. It's like, none of that was set up. Yeah. It was very confusing. No, I did not.
Well, they do that a lot. They have these things that happen, and I don't know if it's just bad writing. Well, it is bad writing, but I don't know if it's they're presuming that you know something or something got lost in the edit. I don't really know. But likewise, we have this guy that they hook up with who's selling. He's carrying longbows, and he says, "Oh, they're for Daguerre. He's put in a big order of these longbows to kill you, Robin." And and Robin's like, "Well, let me pay you when you come work with me." And so he does. But I'm like, okay, but that's a story thread that never goes anywhere because we never hear about Daguerre getting upset that, his longbows never showed up or something. So it's like, where's the, it's randomly kind of thrown in just so Robin and his men can end up having longbows.
Those are, awesome longbows.
They were great.
They were armor-piercing longbows.
We never see them pierce armor except in the
helmet,
training montage.
There's the training montage. You're right. But we do see it, and I do want to say that they kept in the movie as they're handing out the longbows during the big kerfuffle at the end, which we should also talk about the freak parade. They left in just how weird it is to hand out 100 strung longbows to people all at the same time. Like they are tied in knots. It's like taking one hanger out of 50 in an old closet where they're all tied up together. You take it and they all come out with it. That's what this was like. And I thought that was a brave choice to leave that in the movie.
Right.
We could have done
so clean
Hollywood magic. We decided not to.
There were moments. See, that's the thing. It's like there are moments.
Would have been so great to have Daguerre stand up in from the battlements and scream, "Hey, those are my longbows!" That would have solved all of this.
Exactly.
Should you want to run through your list of
complaints?
Complaints.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. First up, right out of the gate, you know that you're in for a problematic film because when the title comes up, it's in papyrus font. That right there. That says a lot.
It says a lot. Although, we should find out. Let's do a little real-time research. Okay. When was papyrus font released? Because maybe it was brand new back then.
It could have been the first project. They may have designed it for this film.
In 1983. It was already kind of played.
It had 8 years. 8 years.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
Now, what are you going to do? Credit to Chris Costello, the graphic designer and illustrator and web designer who brought us Papyrus, which was awesome from 1983 to 1985.
There was, so Friar Tuck had a bald cap, and it was one of those bald caps where the top is bald, but then he's got kind of the ring around his head of hair. He had it. There were a couple other people that had it, and those things just never looked good. Like the top, like the bald area never seemed to match their skin tone. They just looked really, really frustratingly fake.
It's so white.
Yes.
It was so white. It was, those were not good, right?
Okay, so Robin is, he's stealing from Daguerre. There's one point, though, that he decides to rob at the church in the middle of service, mind you, which and they collect all the gold from all the people in the auditorium, in the church to kind of get all of their gold. But then they also walk out with like the church's cross and like all these massive things. I'm like, what are they going to do? Give that to a poor person who's had their taxes taken away from the Daguerre, and they're going to try to use that to pay for it next? Like, where's the logic there?
Well, it's such a stupid bit of comedy because why would they, like, they're trying to be discreet. They enter in disguise and they're trying to be discreet and pretend they're a part of the sermon, and Robin has the knife up the Avit's vestments, and he's having his whisper thing, and then these people who are ostensibly supposed to be part of the service start taking stuff off the walls. Of course, like they gives it all away. It's ridiculous. Like they were well outnumbered by just the people who were in the service, and they gave it away. Taking the cross, that was a bridge too far.
That was too much for me. I'm just going to say the jester.
Oh, Andy.
I don't know if we may as well just talk about him now.
Andy, that jester was just a gift. He was such a gift. He was weird and surreal. He was in a different movie. I honestly think he was in a different movie. When he pours wine all over his face and weird.
I don't know what was up with it, but I fluctuated all the time from I wonder if this is how jesters really were. They're just like, not like just telling jokes and stuff, but just slightly not all there. Yeah. And they're saying things that are off the cuff and wrong. But then this one, I'm like, this is just I was laughing out loud at the TV because this thing was so weird and bad, and I never could figure out if I liked it or if it worked for me or didn't work for me, but it was always just creepy.
That actor is named Philip McDermott, and he's from Manchester, England, and he has done a couple of things. This one, I think you could. This might be the biggest one. The best thing that he's done by rating is Tomorrow La Scala. Well, let's see, Lucy Bates and Ian Burfield, and this one does. Oh, David Oyelowo is in this one. This is a 2002 film. It's got a 6.8 on the IMDb scale. So the other one is The Baby of Maison, which is that's the one with Julia Ormond and Ralph Fiennes and Philip Stone. It's actually a 7. It was a 1993 film, but those are the only other films that Philip McDermott has done. And I think I want to see those movies after watching him as the jester in this one. It was a scene-stealing, scenery-chewing performance.
It was something. It was definitely something.
It was clearly the most energetic performance in the film.
Yes, very true.
Yeah, that's
all right. Next up, I mentioned that there's a scene with the burning village. Robin and Marion are there paying people. He's giving them money because her husband has been killed because they said that they knew who you were, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, the village is being, there's the Normans running around setting things on fire, and Robin and Marion run out of the house and they see troops coming and they run up into a burning building, and then they start making out. I'm like, is this the time for this? Like, what are you guys doing?
It's getting hot in here. Let's take off all our clothes.
Clearly. Oh, man.
Sometimes when the mood strikes, you take it. I guess you've just never been in a relationship like that with that much passion or heat, so to speak. Right. I will say, like, that whole scene is weird from the beginning. Do you know, like, how they arrived on scene? They get, like, the place is burning. It's on fire. And, like, homes are being destroyed. And they ride in and get off their horses and walk so casually into the scene. I was really frustrated. Like, are you really going to interrupt this to give them a bag of coin? Like, I just didn't believe it. Like, I know you've got this going on. Here's a little thing for your trouble. Love, Robin. I just didn't buy it.
Meanwhile, you might want to get out because your house is on fire. Like, it's just, there was too many conflicting elements of the story all kind of hitting at that place. And it's like, no. Either he's helping these people or the village is on fire, but he can't be helping them with gold while the village is on fire and then sneaking off to the back room to have sex with Mary. So weird. This is the one that the experts say is the better one.
I know.
Who are these people?
Who are the experts?
Yeah.
We should question the experts. All right.
Okay.
We've talked about Edward Fox.
I have a couple more.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the movie, it's the wedding, and they have to sneak in, and luckily, it's the Feast of Fools, which is the 6th of January, and so they're going in, and apparently they all find costumes overnight. Like, sometimes it's just like an animal's head on their head, which is kind of gross.
That was gross.
Sometimes it's like a really elaborate costume, and everybody kind of dresses up, and they do this whole parade into the castle. And because it's the Feast of Fools, they have to be let in. Whatever. I don't really know enough about the rules as far as that goes, but they find elaborate costumes in one night, and I was really impressed with their ability to kind of put that together.
Okay, so the Feast of Fools, it was a feast celebrated by the clergy in Europe. It was the root of a brief social revolution in which, quote, power, dignity, and impunity is briefly conferred on those in a subordinate position. And so it was a thing to upend and make the poor appear rich and do that while lampooning the wealthy and the higher social classes. And because it was, I guess, this is what I imagine, because it was a thing that the clergy had started, that's what gives them the ability to wander into castles. And that's kind of the rule that because the church was always able to do anything.
I just find it strange that they're still allowed to do that on the same day that this wedding is taking place, and there are conflicts known around this wedding that they're trying to stage, but let's let this random bunch of miscreants in who all are in disguises.
Well, I did want to add this last little bit, that in the Middle Ages, particularly in France, the Feast of Fools was staged on or about the Feast of Circumcision on January 1st. And the Feast of Circumcision is a Christian celebration of the circumcision of Jesus Christ in accordance with the Jewish tradition 8 days after his birth. So there you go. That's a day that I have not been celebrating. And I know that now I need to revisit our family calendar because, wow.
New Year's Day, Feast of Circumcision.
What do you eat on the Feast of Circumcision Day? Like, what is appropriate? What does one bring to a...
Ring-shaped food.
Anyway. What's next on your list?
Woo! Okay, so some of these points actually aren't complaints, but my last complaint is just the way that they decided to end this film. So we have these people all dressed up fighting all of the de Guerre's men and Falconet's men, and they get defeated, and then we have the wedding. It's very kind of, at that point, it's kind of a traditional Robin Hood story, where Robin and Marian end up getting married, and as soon as they get married and kiss, the sun comes out, and this is the first time in the whole film that we've actually had the sun out, and to that end, that was kind of nice the way that happened, and all the colors change, and all of a sudden it's really vibrant and alive, and it looked great. And then one of these people who had been in the group this whole time, one of the merry men, was dressed like a tree. He was painted green, and he had leaves like glued all over him. And I don't recall seeing him in the fight. I know I saw him come in, but he's just there. And then at the end, when the sun comes out, he just looks up at it and goes, "Ah."
He erupts and quivers. That's what he does. He quivers
that's the end
with
of the movie.
elation. Yeah.
What if John Irvin is such a great director? What is he saying with this?
You know, it's funny because once you start talking about it like that, it's definitely the implication is it is celebration of nature, right? It's a celebration of the glory of nature.
Rebirth,
and
life.
Go back to the beginning of the film. And we didn't talk about this, but the way the film opens, lots of close-ups on, living things, on foxes, on I don't know, skunks and a rabbit
deer,
running.
there's a badger.
Deer, there's a badger, right? Badger. I should the only Andy, this is the only names of animals that I can think of right now are actually Pokemon. So
yes, they didn't exist in the 12th century.
There was Pikachu, a furret
running through the forest.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a narrative, or at least a visual circle here, is that implies that Robin is or the story of Robin Hood is one of the woods. I don't know. I'm probably being too gracious, but it is much more of a celebration of the woods and natural space and that kind of thing. And until you get into the middle, and they live in a cave.
Right.
I've just fallen apart. I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, so there are things in this movie that don't work, but there are things that are interesting. Like, I actually really enjoyed, I don't know if I enjoyed, but I found it to be interesting, the way that they played the antagonists, especially de Guerre, because he had been a friend of Robin's, or Robert's, I should say, at the beginning of the film. Oh, pause on that. Just one other note. At the beginning of the film, he introduces himself as, he's Sir Robert Hoad, Earl of Huntingdon. And so he's Robert Hoad. And then all of a sudden, people are calling him Robin Hood. Like, I went back and I'm like, wait a minute, did he say, now I will be Robin Hood? It never happens. Just suddenly, People are calling him Robin Hood. And then he is like going back and forth, Hood, Hood, Hood. I'm like, it was very, very poorly.
It was very confusing. Yeah, absolutely. Like, what was this? Did he just give himself a nickname? I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
I think you're not supposed to be able to do that.
Yeah, it was weird. Anyway, back to my point. I liked that Daguerre at the end of it, after Falconet has been killed by Robin, we have this kind of changing of position of Daguerre, where he doesn't want to fight Robin. He's a friend of Robin's. He's just kind of created the situation. And it's really kind of all of this is because the two of them are having a hard time as friends.
Yeah. And
at the end, we actually have the Baron kind of yielding and yielding his sword up to Robin. And I'm like, okay, well, that actually was an interesting way to kind of close this out as far as this relationship went.
I agree. And it was the only time that I actually found myself appreciating the change in character here, because I would not have bought that had they tried to do that kind of a twist with the sheriff, for example.
No,
that would not have played. And it may demonstrate why they made such a choice to give us original antagonists who don't have the baggage of Robin Hood lore in that case.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, there are things going for it. Again, I wish that the rest of the film structured around these things that kind of worked was better.
Yeah, me too.
A few things that I want to point out in the fight at the end. There were actually people like getting their faces stepped on.
Yeah.
In the mud. Now, I'm sure it was nice, squishy mud so that it wasn't hurting people. But I'm like, I haven't seen that before. That actually, I give John Irvin a point for that. It's like, okay, that was interesting.
We're going to show some actual trampling.
And then we had to put up with Friar Tuck and one of Daguerre's men, another rotund fellow who go at each other. I'm like, was there a thing between these two? Because all of a sudden they eyeball each other like it's you.
Yes, and we actually to something we haven't talked explicitly about, but we're doing now is violence in these movies, and this one sort of carries the day. Where now some of the most violent stuff, or one of the most sort of violent scenes, is this one where this friar breaks the neck of a soldier right against his chest. That's what's happening there.
Yeah.
As he's reading the last rites, he's saying last rites as he's holding this guy's head against his chest, and he separates his neck, and then the guy falls, and that's Friar Tuck becoming John Rambo.
Yeah. I was like, wow, okay, he just went dark.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen some strangely dark moments in these Robin Hood films for quite a few of them, actually. It's definitely a Robin Hood thing where you have a lot of moments of levity. And then there's these dark moments of like people, like, because I mean, back in the 1922 version, he breaks the guy's back around a column, like he wraps him around a column and pulls him.
Well, there's another little bit of violence that we get, and retribution, I should say, in the character of Harry, right? The guy with the eye scar, who is the central betrayer in The Merry Men. He doesn't buy what's going on, what Robin is leading them to do. And so he decides, I'm going to take Marion and I'm going to take her back because now I know that it's Marion. This, you don't need to know. Anyway, he takes Marion, who everybody else thinks is the page, and goes back and delivers Marion back to Daguerre and Falconet. And of course, Daguerre and Falconet don't give this guy any passage. They take him and torture him, and then they hang him in a cage. And you see maggots crawling in and out of his eye sockets. They plucked his eyes out. Yeah. It was pretty horrific. And that was something that we didn't have in some of these other Robin Hood stories, was this character betraying our central objective.
And that was another really interesting moment, because here you have this feast of fools, all these guys in disguise, coming up to the castle to try getting in, and they're trying to be jolly. And meanwhile, everybody is dumbstruck by seeing their friend hanging in the cage with his eyes gouged out. Only Friar Tuck actually is the wherewithal to kind of stay in character, as it were, and do this whole speech that he has to do to get into the castle. So, I mean, that element I thought was actually pretty interesting.
I did too. I call that a win.
That's the film, though, right? It has wins, and it has a lot of issues.
You want to talk briefly about Irvin? And you said you didn't feel like this was necessarily a strong example of strong direction. And I know you haven't seen a lot of Irvin's stuff.
Yeah, I haven't. I've seen, and I think I don't know if he's still active. I know he was as of a couple years ago, but I've seen, I'm just looking through his filmography, Ghost Story, Next of Kin. Now I've seen this. I think I saw Widow's Peak.
I quite liked Widow's Peak.
Yeah, I remember liking that one too. And City of Industry would have been the most recent thing of his that I saw in 97.
You haven't seen 1986 Schwarzenegger classic Raw Deal?
No. I missed most of those.
That's a significant miss.
There are directors like this that I often wonder, like, would it be an interesting experiment to like go through his filmography and look at them and see, is there something I'm really seeing here that kind of ties this together as far as what he's doing with his projects? But I don't know. I haven't found a director whose work I'm quite that interested in, who's working at this level yet.
I'm not sure that this. I don't feel like this is the one. I think the low points would risk. I'd risk breaking me.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned the script, but we've mentioned enough about the script just to credit Sam Resnick and John McGrath.
I didn't look to see what else they had done. I think Sam Resnick, this is it.
John McGrath has a bit of fare, but by the end of, in terms of what he's written, this was the second to the last thing that he did, apart from some television. He did Myrie Moore, mostly TV.
He's a TV writer. So this was, this is something that we should talk about. This was not designed to be a TV movie. And it was in the US, it became a TV movie. In certain countries, it did get a theatrical release, but not in the US because of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, as I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that the two people writing it are, well, mainly John McGrath, since Sam Resnick, as I said, has no other credits. He's a TV person. And so that's interesting that it ended up being kind of a TV project.
Well, what's funny about it, do you ever watch any, I know you don't watch a lot of TV, but there is a certain style and tone of TV shows, like BBC TV shows, right? They're BBC productions. A lot of the contemporary ones, you'll get them, they're produced either in Wales or down in Vancouver, right? And they all share the same kind of look. And texture and aspect ratio and just the way the characters move, it's all the same. This fits right in there. This absolutely feels like the made-for-TV Robin Hood series to me. Could you, with very little updating, you could be right there.
I wouldn't put it too far past that. Even the cinematography, Jason LaHelle is behind the camera here. It feels kind of TV-ish. Yeah. They shot in some beautiful locations. Even if it was kind of overcast generally throughout the film, there were some really nice areas that they found to use as locations. But and I don't know really if I can fault him or if it really falls on Irvin's shoulders as far as the way that things were staged with the camera.
How did it do at the box office?
Well, we already talked about what a troubled little project this one was. Irvin's film cost $15 million to make, which is about $28.2 million in today's dollars. Unfortunately, as we've discussed, caught in the battle of two similar films being released within months of each other, Irvin's British production decided to drop its theatrical release in the US to avoid getting crushed by Costner's Juggernaut. This one went straight to TV instead, as I've said, premiering on the Fox network May 13th, 1991, a month ahead of Costner's film. It still played theatrically around Europe, as well as in Australia, New Zealand, and Japan, but I can't find anything about what it earned. I'm guessing that's largely because of the TV release here in the States. Oh well. Can't have broken Costner's record, so we will just leave it at that.
You know what? On the spreadsheet, just put it right below Prince of Thieves. Just write the next thing down, and we'll just assume that it did. It was second to that, and there's nothing else less to talk about. $1.
The price is
less
right,
in
less.
euros. Yes, that's fine. I think it's time for us to rank it, Andy.
Yeah, this was a frustrating one. Very trying film. So, But hey, what are you going to do? sometimes that happens.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel and you'll see the list of all the movies that Andy and I have talked about on this very show. And if you swipe over in your show notes in your podcast player of choice and tap on the word Flickchart, it should take you straight to this movie where you can add it to your list and see how it stands up against ours.
First up, Robin Hood or A Star is Born, 1937.
A Star is Born, 1937, please.
Yes, indeed. Robin Hood or Robin and Marian.
Robin and Marian.
Robin and Marian. Robin Hood or The Hudsucker Proxy.
The Hudsucker Proxy.
You know I have problems with that movie, but I will still pick it.
Yeah.
For this one. Robin Hood or The Hound of the Baskervilles, 1939.
Oh, the dogs.
Give me some Rathbone.
Dogs. Yeah, I'll take Rathbone over this.
Robin Hood or The Edge.
The Edge.
Yep, I'll take The Edge. Robin Hood or Rush. Once the film that was at the bottom of our list.
I would watch Robin and Robin Hood before Rush.
I would watch Rush before Robin Hood.
Oh, Andy. No, we must reset expectations here. You cannot. Rush is a movie with a legacy around these parts. You can't just do that.
It doesn't matter. I would still pick it over this.
Yeah, we're going to go to the map. This is a ridiculous place for you and I to come to blows. Here we go.
I was playing Tree Man there.
Yeah. One.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Rock.
Paper. As it should be. You go to sleep. Just sleep on it. Sleep on it. You're going to feel resolved in the morning. It'll be fine.
Oh, we'll see.
Actually, I think you're not going to think at all about this in the morning.
I probably won't. It's so low on the chart now. I'm not going to worry about it. Robin Hood or Children of the Corn.
Children of the Corn.
Children of the Corn. God, that's also a bad movie.
Yeah.
Robin Hood or Scoop. Oof. Wow. Haven't thought of that movie. I forgot that movie existed.
Scoop.
I will take Robin Hood here.
That was a bad movie, Scoop. That's a bad movie.
It was.
I'm gonna allow myself a little bit of grace to be swayed. You're right.
All right.
You can have it.
Robin Hood it is. So that leaves Robin Hood at 408 on our chart. 408 out of 416. I'd say that's a pretty low spot to land.
What did it do on your personal chart?
Well, let's see. My personal chart landed at 4127 out of 4194, which is about a 2%. And that's exactly where it is on our chart, 2%.
It fared almost as poorly on my personal chart. Out of 1,101 movies, it's at 1067, which is 3%. So it did just a hair better. You know, if I go by the algorithm, this is one of those movies that doesn't light up any stars on flickchart.com. So at letterboxd.com, I'm not going to give it 0 stars. Like it's not that movie. It's maybe a 1.5 star movie for me. Where'd it land for you?
It's at a 1 for me. And I think that's largely because there are some interesting elements in it. It's just the whole package is just done so badly that it's hard to justify thinking about those elements because they're just not in something that I want to look at again.
This is for me. It's a movie that's I see it when I'm hungry and I turn it off and I'm hungry again almost immediately. Like I don't even remember having eaten. And that just doesn't, it's not an offensive movie. There are things that are happening. There's some good moments in it. But it is, I said at the beginning, it's a milquetoast film. And I struggle with that. This is not going to be a go-to Robin Hood recommendation going forward. It's right where it needs to be.
I wish that I found it as milquetoast as you find it because, there were elements in it that just plain were just frustrating for me. So it's a little more, something in my stomach that's giving me heartburn.
It's churning. Yeah. All right. I'll take that. Okay. So where do we land? It's a 1 star?
Yeah. 1.25, basically. So
yeah, it's fine. Give it a 1 star. And I don't know if I need to say it out loud, but I'm not going to give it a like.
Nope. I think that's clear.
All right. Where do we go from here?
This will be a fun jump. We're only going a couple years, but we're jumping to Mel Brooks's 1993 film, Robin Hood, Men in Tights.
Okay. I thought about Robin Hood Men in Tights a lot during this movie. In the one scene in particular is when the village was on fire. Because that's how Men in Tights opens, and the villagers come out and say, there's got to be a better way to do credits. Well, every time you do a Robin Hood movie, you burn down our houses. I just wanted that sweet relief during that scene.
Well, it'll be a fun one to talk about, if for no other reason than to change things up in this series.
That's right. This is our penultimate movie here, Men in Tights. We're almost at the end of this epic series, and yeah, that's a breath of fresh air. We're deep in planning for the Marvel Movie Minute. Don't forget to go back and check out season 1 if you haven't listened to it. There's some sweet podcasting about that old Iron Man.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins. Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Now, this movie has the preponderance of reviews leans high in terms of the stars, and that's frustrating when...
Really does. 60%
it really does.
5-star reviews.
It's a lot of 5-star reviews, and so I usually, when we don't care for the movie, we go high. I am not doing that because I like the 1 stars so much. But you were feeling confident that you could find a good 5-star review. How'd that go for you? Make that sound one more time for the kids.
I don't need any new ringtones. I have a 5-star by Mr. Bill. I don't know why I'm finding that so funny. Mr. Bill says, for 5 stars, good as any, better than some.
That was it?
That was his review.
Oh no, Mr. Bill.
Better than some.
Well, my 1 star it's sort of a concatenation between 2 reviews, and because they build off of one another. The real one that I want to talk about is titled Pathetic by Dan, but Dan actually references a Robin Hood movie I just didn't get by Sir Gawain, and so I'm just going to read one line from Sir Gawain's, and then I'm going to read you Dan's. Sir Gawain says, there is a more thoughtful side to the Robin Hood in this movie, but it was overridden by him acting like a smart aleck. For example, there's a scene where Robin Hood reveals his secret of shooting the bow to his fellow outlaws by giving them the finger. You see, the secret it is in his middle finger. And yes, they laugh. Ha-ha, I guess. So Dan continues, I'll save my time and suggest you just read the other 1-star review of this movie. I agree that the best portrayal in motion pictures of Robin Hood was the British TV series Robin of Sherwood, but the best presentation of Robin's legend I read in grammar school. I wish I could remember the title or the author, but it was the best adventure book I've ever read. It showed the whole story of Robin Hood as a teenage boy who became an outlaw for killing a deer to his most wonderfully depicted death. This movie is a primitive. In one scene, there's a soldier who threw a big rock that probably weighs half a ton off the stairs as if it was a basketball. If this movie was true, there would be no Legend of Robin Hood, and it seemed at times it was made to mock that very person. But perhaps it's about Robin Hood, not Hood? I wouldn't even recommend this movie for the kids on a Saturday morning. We didn't talk about A, the middle finger bit, or throwing the rock like a basketball, which both were in my notes and are straight up hysterical.
You're right. Oh, so many more things we could talk about.
So many more things. Thanks, Amazon. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We are highlighting adaptations from Season 9 over at our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. That's the site where listeners can purchase the source material for all of our adapted film discussions.
We had a big Robin Hood series this season, looking at 9 different versions on screen. Many were likely adapted from Howard Pyle's The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, including Douglas Fairbanks in Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, and the 1991 Robin Hood, and Ridley Scott's Robin Hood.
Robin and Marian was specifically based on the ballad The Jest of Robin Hood.
And we really don't have too much to say about Robin and the Seven Hoods.
We talked Dead Ringers for our David Cronenberg series adapted from Barry Wood and Jack Geislin's novel Twins.
Have you checked out that show?
I haven't, but I've heard great things.
2 comedies from our Steve Martin series were adaptations, Pennies from Heaven from the BBC series, and The Lonely Guy from the book by Bruce J. Friedman.
The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was part of our Colin Higgins series, adapted from the Broadway musical.
Spike Lee brought us Black Klansman from Ron Stallworth's memoir.
And we looked at a trio of John le Carré adaptations, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Little Drummer Girl, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Plus, all 3 movies in our Agnieszka Holland series were based on books, Europa, In Darkness, and Spore.
La Cage aux Folles and its remake The Birdcage both came from Jean Poiret's original play.
We also talked about Arsenic and Old Lace and Charade in our Cary Grant series.
All of these were based on other material, and it is all available on our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. Every book purchased supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations we've covered and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.